All right, let's get right into it. Today we're diving into a source that makes a pretty bold claim that you can decode modern power, but only if you look at it through the lens of ancient scripture. It's a journey into this world where, supposedly, the symbols we see every day hide a much deeper and, well, much darker meaning.
So the source text just drops this bombshell right at the start. It immediately sets up the central conflict, right? The idea of a hidden allegiance, that the true object of worship is being concealed behind a more public one. And believe me, this one sentence, it basically sets the stage for everything else we're about to unpack. Okay, so to really get what this argument is about, we've got to look at the foundation it's built on. The author constructs their entire case around one single verse from the book of Isaiah. They use it like a key, a key to unlock what they believe is a hidden truth.
And here it is, Isaiah chapter 65, verse 11. This is the absolute cornerstone of the whole theory. The source zeroes in on those last two parts, the ones that talk about preparing a table for some entity named Gad and filling a drink offering for another one called Meni. Now, according to the author, these aren't just, historical footnotes. Nope. They're supposedly active principles at work even today.
So let's break this down real quick. The verse gives us two figures of, false worship. First, there's Gad, who gets a feast or a table prepared for him. And then you have Machani, who gets a drink offering, a libation. The whole point the source is trying to make is that these ancient names are still being honored right now. They're just disguised.
All right, now we're getting to the first major connection the author makes. This is where the ancient text supposedly collides with our modern world. They take that second name, Meni, and connect it directly to something you and I probably handle every single day.
And here it is, the first big interpretive leap from the source. It proposes a direct link, both in sound and in symbol. The ancient god Meni is modern money. So in this interpretation, that drink offering from Isaiah, it's not a literal drink. It's the constant flow, the endless pursuit of currency.
Then the source points to a really familiar phrase as a piece of evidence. That text on the US dollar, "In God we trust," gets totally reframed. It's presented not as a statement of faith in a creator, but as a declaration of trust in the god money, which is money. The question the source wants you to ask is, which god are we talking about?
And all of this builds to a pretty stunning conclusion. The source labels the dollar with that specific phrase on it as nothing less than the prophetic mark of the beast, a symbol, they say, of both economic and spiritual allegiance that's been branded across the entire world.
Okay, so we've just talked about currency. Now, the author makes a big pivot over to patriotism. They apply the exact same method of deconstruction, but this time to the lyrics of the US national anthem. The argument here is that it's not a song about freedom at all, but a hymn to a completely different power.
The whole analysis kicks off with the very first line. "By the dawn's early light" is interpreted here as a direct reference to the Lightbringer, a title that's often associated with Lucifer. So in this view, the beautiful imagery of a new day is recast as the rising of a fallen entity. Okay, moving on to the next line. The source connects the phrase, "what so proudly we hailed," to the biblical description of a fallen cherub in the book of Ezekiel, an angel whose big downfall was, you guessed it, pride. So the act of hailing a flag is reinterpreted here as an act of prideful worship.
And here, the source takes a real historical event and recasts it as a cosmic one. The perilous fight, which we all know refers to the War of 1812, is presented as a symbol for that epic war in heaven between Michael and the dragon, the one described in the book of Revelation. So, as you can probably imagine, the author wraps up this whole section with a really stark final judgment. The national anthem, in their view, is basically a secret hymn. Its patriotic glory is just a cloak for a much deeper, hidden allegiance.
Okay, so in this final section, the source starts to weave these two big threads together. The whole interpretation of the dollar and the hidden meaning of the anthem, they get combined to point toward one of the most well-known and frankly most feared prophecies in the entire Bible. This passage right here from Revelation is presented as the ultimate proof. The source connects the dollar, which remember it already called the mark, to this prophecy about a system where you can't buy or sell without it. And it doesn't stop there. The source also symbolically links the act of placing your right hand over your heart for the anthem to the idea of receiving this mark.
And of course, that same passage from Revelation ends with a number, the number of the beast.
The source presents this as the final, ultimate piece of the puzzle in its entire chain of interpretation.
So when you look at the whole picture, the source presents this really complete, self-contained system of interpretation, right? It takes all these familiar symbols and totally recasts them through a scriptural lens. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating final question to think about. What does it even mean when ancient texts are used as a key to try and unlock modern symbols? And more importantly, what does that whole process reveal about the text, the symbol, and maybe even about us?